And also, so PK, foreign key, and not none can be specified when you create the table. There are different ways. One way, so there are three different ways. One, for each column you can specify the constraint. For each column. Another approach, after list of the column you can specify primary key is on, foreign key is on, or something like that. You can append the constraint after statement, last part of statement. That's the second option. And third one is first create without constraint. Then you can use another data definition language. It's a modify. In database SQL, we are not going to use a modify. Instead, alter command. So I'd like to change the data structure of employee table. How can you change? Alter table name and add primary key and SSN. It's very straightforward. You can imagine. Right? It's like the natural language. So actually people, one of the good job of such a group is make the SQL very easy to use. Okay? So you can use any of them. But you will see the problem, so I will explain later. When you create the primary key without data, it's okay. But when you add the data, sometimes it's hard to handle. So sometimes you need to create without key, then add the key later, and so on. Also another, how can you remove database object table? We are going to drop. So create, alter, drop are the major, the DDL command. So you can use drop table and table name. And so on. DCL is grant the something permission, like the select permission. Select on EMP to the username, like that. Okay, it's a very straightforward. We will not cover in the classroom or exercise lab. Instead, you can learn by yourself. But there are two main. DCL revoke. If you cancel the granted the permission, you can use the revoke or grant. This is I think the shortest lecture to explain the SQL part. Within 30 minutes, we covered all the things. Not details. The details you will be better than me. Okay. So when you learn any language, do not memorize. You don't have to memorize. Instead, understand the how, why we got this command. Based, especially the SQL based on relational algebra. Okay. So if you can make the relational algebra, the others are very straightforward. Just to map to the SQL part. Okay. Any question? So we will see the case by case. Using the slide. My laptop is sleeping. Okay, yes. It's okay. So, when I joined the database group in my first job company, they said SQL is called each letter separately. But when I moved to the United States, I realized that most of the people call the SQL like that, and including Wikipedia. But it doesn't matter. SQL, SQL, or the structured query language is not a big problem. But interestingly, the IBM actually didn't issue the file, the copyright for the name of the. Most of the time, if the company developed a new language, they copyright what file, such as the brand name, but they didn't. So everybody used the SQL. So that is the reason SQL itself looks like the easy, relatively easier language than others. So because of that, even non-relational database model, database like including NoSQL database. NoSQL means not only the SQL relational database, but for big data or unstructured data, like the MongoDB and so on. So if you are interested in such an additional DBMS database, I'm offering the NoSQL database maybe the summer or the fall of the 2018, because I can offer one by one. So, but don't be confused. Even though you can see some like the SQL, it doesn't mean always the SQL. Only relational database model. Any SQL used in the relational database model, it is really structured query language. And also one more thing is, SQL is the only way, only language, only method to access relational database management system. Okay? It's the only way. Sometimes I never use the SQL, but my application access the relational database like the Oracle or Informix. What happened? Behind, sometimes abstracted or component-based or library. Inside the library, inside the component, they are using the SQL. One of my friends who works for the oil company, what he's doing is a database, actually database management for the oil company. So what he's doing is manage something data from drill. Okay, so the drill is kind of sensor. So they send a lot of data, speed and how much worn out and so on, and how much oil. Then he usually does, such a company purchase the application package to the monitor such a system. One time he found something error to access a database, so he tried to find the SQL. Then it takes, he said, a really long time to find the exact component because it's kind of the 10 or 15 depths. So called this one. Inside even the database name is just C1, C2, something like that. It's high. So even though you see such a database application, but still use the SQL to access the data. Okay, so we will see quickly. These are the very short history. It's 86 actually. SQL 1 is 86. Another history is, I'm not sure whether I mentioned. So Dr. E.F. Code and his group proposed the idea in 1970. Actually 69, but published under 1970. Then they decide to implement like the SQL and DBMS system based on their idea, which is called the System R project in their IBM group. Then they did, so they tried to commercialize, but in the executive level they declined because they already have the well-known the hierarchical database. So they give up actually to commercialize. Instead, some of the employee or researcher, they quit their job from IBM, then they continue to develop the implementation of the relational model. Then eventually they commercialize and then said that is actually the history of the Oracle company. So then later IBM realized the relational database is a really big market. So they start again, which is the DB2. So IBM DB2 is the slower, later than the Oracle database. Okay. So these are the short history. Okay. From the SQL, it's actually 2000, but it's sometimes, where is the 2000? It's not free anyway. Okay. In addition to the overview of the SQL, first you need to start, when you complete the design, you need to create the database. When you create the database, you need to use the SQL, so structured query language. But before you start to create the table, you need to have the kind of the boundary. So, for example, sometimes I use the example of the building house. The designing kind of the design. okay, like the architect design. Then creating table is a building house. But before you start the building house, you need to find property, land. Okay, then sometimes the clear boundary, you should not go to the neighbor boundary, and this is my boundary, you can do whatever you want inside the boundary. Such a boundary is called a schema. Schema is, as we discussed before, schema is all the description of your database. In other words, if I create a schema boundary, then anything that I create related to that database schema. So first you need to create the schema. Okay? Specify the schema name. This is my property. This is my boundary of the. If you would like to create a university database, first create the university schema. Okay. Then how to create? Create a schema. Company and authorization to J. Smith. So J. Smith's user, database user can create the table in the company schema. Did you create the schema when you practice in the MySQL?
No.
Did you create any schema in your previous experience? No, mostly not. What happened? So they tell a lie? No. Instead, if you do not create the schema, your username, so in the MySQL practice, you are using root user, but probably the GA suggests you can create another user for your practice. Such a username will be automatically schema name. Okay? Because of that, you may not realize. If you do not create the schema, you can still use the schema. Automatically, implicitly, your username will be used. So you don't have to worry about too much. However, some of the projects, they really picky. So they create the schema and assign the authorization to the user. Then you need to use such a schema name. And another one is a catalog database. Let's go back to the long time before, like the beginning of this semester. We talk about the benefit of advantages of using database, relational data. One of the advantages, do you remember? It's a self-describing nature. What does it mean, self-describing nature? What if we do not have the self-describing feature? We need to specify in our application program. Name is 10 byte, then followed by comma, and next 10 byte is for the social security number, something like that. But you don't have to do that if we are using database. It's already described in the database as a metadata, which is called the catalog database. So each DBMS provides a catalog database. What about the MySQL? MySQL also provides information on the schema database. What about the Oracle? Oracle provides also catalog database. So like such an example, user underbar table format. They are using the table, the design you can use the select to access the information. Okay? Then such a way. So if you'd like to see the metadata of your database, any other database, you can search in the catalog database. Each database, DBMS, use different name. So Oracle used the user or and DBA underbar something like that. It's not specific the database. They have the naming rule. Then you can use such a table name. And MySQL is an information underbar schema database. So you can search any information from that database. The MySQL, I forgot, it has. And the DB2, I forgot, it has. Informix also has. You can search each manual where you can find such a metadata information. Then, finally, we can create a table. Then, when we specify the table and the relation name and the attribute name, you remember I.A. What does it mean? Employee dot SSN. Because SSN can be used for any table. This is attribute name. Similarly, we can use the first company. Company is the schema, but we can omit because we are going to use username as a schema name. So it can be ignored, but still table name dot attribute name if you want to specify. Okay? So in this case, this is a schema dot table name, but the schema name can be ignored. So that is the reason you didn't use in your the exam exercise lab. Okay, so we are going to use the same database with the sample data. I think that you memorized already all of this. I'm not going to be back again. So, but keep in mind, this the database state instance and our schema will be used for our practice. Okay, so let me quickly go over some example I already explained. Create table is what? Keyword. Okay, you cannot create the table name as a table. You cannot create the table name as a create. These are the keyword. Variable character also keyword. Integer is keyword character. What's the difference between variable character and character? It's a variable length. This one is fixed length. Okay. Then separate by the comma, and non-null is the constraint. As I explained, for each row you can specify the constraint and end with the parenthesis and always end with colon, semicolon. Okay. So this is not a problem. So in your midterm exam, so probably I'm going to ask what is the sequence of all the list of student name at that time. If you miss this one, it's a basic rule. If I copy and paste your answer to the MySQL, if return the answer, the full credit. If there is error, the deduction. Okay, please keep in mind this one. And what else? Anything else? This is simple. Then this is another way to specify the constraint that the primary key append at the end of the column. Still, don't forget to add a comma for the last attribute, comma and primary key. Before that, but if in this case, comma, the new line, comma, new line. I want to use one big line. Is it okay or not?
Yes.
No problem. There is no problem as long as this one. So comma, then you can. So but it's readability. Because in terms of readability, this one is very easy. So if you join any practical real project after graduation, your project manager has something such as the formatting, the rule, or naming rule. Then you need to follow. For example, many of them use the capital letter only. Or it doesn't matter in case of the non-case sensitive, but if your manager asks such a rule, you need to follow. Or sometimes it has indentation, like here, like the tab or the couple of things. Okay, for better readability. Then, so we have the key, primary key. So D number is in this case the primary key. Unique. The D name is the unique. What's the difference between primary key and unique? How many unique can you have?
More than one.
More than one. Okay? So 0, you don't have the unique. But 1, 2, it doesn't matter depending on your design. Okay? How many primary key? Only one. Without primary key. It's okay in SQL. There is no problem. You can create without error. But primary key is required if you want to keep your relational database design. Okay? Because the relational database must have the primary. So that is the primary key. Then, however, another difference is the non-null. In case of primary key, it's automatically non-null. Even though you do not specify here, it's automatically non-null. However, unique allow null data. Unique does not consider null to find the uniqueness. So if you want to keep the non-null, you need to add non-null constraint here. Okay? And foreign key, what does it mean this? Which one is the referencing, study. And which one is referenced? Manager social security number is referencing because it's here, 30. And this one, EMP table social security number is the referenced target, okay? Which means all manager social security number should in SSN. So SSN should be unique and non-null. Non-null is not a big deal, but unique. At least it should be unique. Then you can find. Okay, then if you run this one, is it error or the okay? Any syntax error? No syntax error, but if you run this one, it will be error. Why? You should have employee table with the social security number first. Okay? So because of that, some students complain. I tested this one, it doesn't work because you need to create. Then which means you need to create the employee table first. So sometimes it's confused to add primary key, foreign key, everything. So because of the first, without the constraint, you can create the table. Then add, using add alter table, you can add primary key later, add foreign key later. Yes?
It's like we create first the parent, then the child.
Yes, you should follow, but sometimes both of them, this one has a foreign key to this one has a foreign key to this. How to create? You cannot create at the same time. Instead, without constraint, without primary key, without foreign key, you can create the table, then add. Okay? Also, performance. So, if you create the table A, millions, okay, data, with a primary key. Then, next, another approach is without primary key, create the table, million. Then, the add primary key. Which one will be faster? One by one or later? Later is faster. Think about the one by one. One is okay. Second, maybe okay. Then the 500,000 you need to sort. Every time you need to sort, it will take a much longer time, one by one. Instead, you can sort at once, just one time, if you add the primary key later. So that's another performance issue. Okay, so that is a create table. So by considering all of this is one of the examples. One more thing, I do not, and Sule in the exercise do not mention about physical database design. Means, what is the size of the table? Okay? How to organize the physically, internally. It's not discussed here. All of them we are using default size. Okay? That's also critical in real project. What is the initial size? How to extend? How to organize? That's a really critical problem. So whether employees in this, the faster hard disk drive or slow hard disk drive, or read only, or the frequently update, you need to separate such a thing for better performance. But here we do not pay attention to. Later we will see during the tuning issue. So these are the example of creating the company database. Okay. Best practice. There are many variants of that. As long as you follow the syntax, it's okay. This is one of the examples to create the table. Sometimes the primary, the Unicode is appended for each row. Please practice. Okay. Then I strongly suggest to type by yourself. Probably you will get the error sometimes, most of the time. Then the fix, and you will get used. It's really interesting. Some of you guys already got the similar the experience. Even though I forgot the many of the command like the SQL, and because I left the industry almost 20 years ago, but still my finger remember. If I type the command, really So automatically type the very specific command, like the VI command. I cannot explain the details, but I can do automatically. But that is based on the muscle experience, not the logical experience. Sometimes you need such a muscle experience for better the experience. Please practice with your own hand. Even this time consuming, it will be helpful. Yes?
We have more than one primary key for the last two tables.
This one? How many primary key? It's a one primary key but composite. It's a combining ESSN. It's an underline, connected underline. Okay, not two primary key. This is a not two primary key. It's a one primary key but composite primary key. That's a good question. And this one, even? I thought this is a 2. Okay. Then the data type, whatever you imagine is in the data type. So I'm not going to explain. But you need to check sometimes the precision, how much precise of the plotting. That's critical, like the pointer, like the scientific, the application. So pointer 0001. Okay, how much precise? That will different like if you the rocket, shoot the rocket. So if you slightly change it the beginning, but it will be huge difference later. And also tax problem or the financial problem. So you need to check the precision. That was the problem. So first time when we have the DBMS, their precision is not precise than the program language. So we expect such up to 10 digits, but it has only the half. Nowadays it's not a big deal, but you need to check if you, especially in the finance or the specific application. Character and the variable character and so on. And it's a bit which is not used a lot. And Boolean. What's the difference between this Boolean and your program language Boolean? This one, no. We do not have the null. It's only either true or false. But in Boolean, on database SQL, it has the null. Okay, so null is another the type of Boolean. Okay, and the date. This is really helpful to calculate the number of days or period or the time and so on. When I learned the C language the first time, this was actually the first project assigned. Like how many days. Input is 2 days, output is the number of days in between. Looks like easy, but actually not easy because of leap year. So you need to calculate the leap year. Every 4 years is a leap year, but every 100 years is not leap year, but every 1,600 years is also leap year, and so on. So you need to calculate such a thing, but it's already considered in the date type. Very easy to use. And timestamp interval. So those are, because of that, it has been used a lot for reporting tool. Directly, people learn the SQL, then directly print out the report. And for the constraint, I already explained the key, entity, and the non-null. And also, in case of the not null, like this one, not null. But if the value is not, like the D number for the project, it's not specified. At that time, it will be error. To avoid the error, you can assign the default value. In case of no data, for the non-null column, you can specify the default value. That is the default. Yeah, default value. You can specify the default. There is another constraint for the user-specified constraint. So key, entity integrity, and foreign key, non-null. These are the general constraint. It's not user, but I want a salary is not more than 10K. It's our business rule. It's not general rule. At the time, we can use a check constraint. You can add user specified. So the constraint. Not all relational database management systems support the check constraint. Some of them, most of them support, but not all of them. At that time, if not, If your database management system does not support the check constraint, how can you do that? In your application, you need to check every time. Okay? In your program, check whether salary is higher than 10K. Or we will see the trigger. Do you remember the assertion and trigger? Using assertion and trigger, we can keep the user constraint. Primary key, unique. Okay, foreign key. Be careful when you are using the foreign key. Practice. Create a table, and without creating, without the reference table, you can try to create. Another thing, all the relational database management system provide the error code. Okay, error code is not just the error code; it's the information of the query or any SQL. So if you encounter any issue or any problem, check the error code. Error code is also standardized. How to receive the error code, using the error code, you can do something. Like the primary key violation is a huge problem. So in case of the primary violation, duplicate data, you can do extra thing in your application program. Like the error handling in your Java programming. Okay? You can do action for the event, error event. Similarly, you can do the same thing. So always check the error code. So when I search and also when I have the HR department to hire database administrator or the database related job, I usually ask the two things. How many catalog database you know, okay? Because to understand the database, so you should know more the catalog database. Another one is error code. How many error code you can understand? Like in case of Oracle has a very popular, well-known error code. Using through the error code, most of things you can address. You can find easily the solution. Okay. So these are another barriers. It's the same thing as the previous one, but additional thing. Like sometimes I just specify the primary key name. You can do that. Most of the data, most of the DBMS support like the constraint and name. Or if you are using the alter command, so you can specify the primary key name. Okay. What if I do not specify the name of the constraint? Automatically, the database management system assigns the name. It's a very weird name, like the SYS00100 PK, so you cannot understand easily. But if you want to specify, then why do we need to specify the name of the primary key or such a foreign key name? Why? Primary key, for example, is the best way to find the data efficiently, right? Because it's unique, it's an unknown. If I know the UBID, I can find the data very quickly, which means when a database management system decides, as I gave you the example, how many different ways to go to Manhattan from here? Many, many different ways. Only one way, fastest way we need. At the time, I can specify, why don't you use the I-95? Okay? Then, similarly, in your query, you can specify, advise the DBMS. Why don't you use the EMP-PK primary key to access the data? You can specify. At that time, you'd rather have the